Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're embarking on really a fascinating mission to unpack a new study. It sheds light on how different tools for gathering information impact you. We're talking AI language models like ChatGPT, traditional web search, and, just using your own brain.
Mhm.
How do these affect your learning, your work quality, and even, surprisingly, your brain activity itself?
Yeah, and this wasn't just like a simple survey. The researchers used some pretty advanced techniques, electroencephalography, EEG, to actually record brain activity in real time. And they paired that with natural language processing, NLP, to deeply analyze the essays people wrote. They even had human teachers and a specially built AI judge scoring the work, plus interviews.
Wow, okay, so really comprehensive.
Definitely. It involved 54 participants, took place over 4 months, and everyone was focused on one specific task, writing essays.
So for this deep dive, we're really zeroing in on the key questions this study tackled for you, the listener. First, do people actually write different essays depending on the tool?
Hmm.
LLM, search engine, or just brain power? Second, and this is maybe the most intriguing part, how does your brain activity literally change with each approach?
Yeah.
Third, what's the impact on your memory when you use an LLM? And finally, does using something like ChatGPT change how much you feel you own the work you create?
Crucial question.
Absolutely. This deep dive is basically your shortcut to understanding this complex dance between tech and our brains. You'll get some surprising facts, insights that could genuinely reshape how you think about using AI. Okay, let's unpack this. So to kick things off, how exactly did they set this experiment up to get these kinds of detailed insights?
Right. So they recruited 54 adults, ages 18 to 39, average around 23, and they were pulled from 5 big universities in the Boston area, MIT, Harvard, Tufts, places like that.
Okay, so a solid academic cohort.
Exactly. And diverse, too. Undergrads, postgrads, postdocs, even research scientists. So a good mix of backgrounds. Gender was pretty balanced, too.
Makes the findings more robust, I imagine.
It does. And they were randomly assigned to one of 3 groups, balanced for age and gender. First, the LLM group. They could only use OpenAI's GPT-4o for writing their essays. Nothing else. No browsers, no other apps, just the AI.
Strictly controlled then.
Fairy. Then there was the search engine group. They could use any website, mostly Google, but, and this is key, ChatGPT or any other LLM was strictly banned. They even added AI to their search queries automatically just to make sure no AI-powered results slipped through.
Clever. Okay, and the third group.
The brain-only group, just what it sounds like. No LLMs, no websites for help, purely relying on their own knowledge and thinking.
A true baseline.
Yeah.
And this went on for 4 months.
4 months, yeah. Each person had 3 mandatory sessions, plus an optional 4th one later on, which turned out to be really interesting.
And each session involved quite a bit, didn't it? Not just writing.
Right. Each time, there was a welcome, getting the EEG headset fitted, that's the cap, with sensors measuring brain activity. Then a quick calibration test, some mental math. Yeah. Then the main event, the essay writing task. Afterwards, a post-assessment interview and then a debrief. A pretty thorough process each time.
And the essays themselves, what were they writing about?
Good question. The prompts were designed to get argumentative responses. On topics like loyalty, like, does true loyalty mean unconditional support? Or, happiness do achievements have to benefit others for true happiness? Also things like choices, forethought, philanthropy, art, courage. Pretty deep concepts. Perfect. Enthusiasm, too.
Okay, topics designed to make you think.
Yeah.
And they collected more than just the essays, right? You mentioned the EEG.
Absolutely. The EEG was crucial for measuring cognitive engagement, mental effort, how hard the brain was working and which parts were connecting. Then the NLP analysis on the essays themselves, looking at linguistic stuff, specific names or places mentioned, those named entities or NRs, and enneagrams, which are common word sequences, like linguistic fingerprints.
Right. And the interviews, what were they digging into there?
Those were key for the subjective side. How participants chose their topic, if they felt they followed the structure, could they quote their own essay later, a memory test, essentially. And crucially, that sense of ownership. Did they feel the essay was theirs? Plus, overall satisfaction.
And the scoring, you mentioned 2 types of judges.
Yeah, this was a neat part of the design. Both experienced human teachers who see AI writing all the time now, and a specially built AI judge scored the essays, which, as we'll see, gave some fascinatingly different perspectives on quality and originality.
Okay, we've got the setup. Meticulous. But now, the really juicy part, what happened inside their heads, the brain activity. This is where the story gets wild, right?
It really does. The EEG analysis showed quite robustly that the LLM search engine and brain-only groups had significantly different patterns of neural connectivity. It means they were using fundamentally different cognitive strategies, like their brains were wired up differently depending on the tool.
Different strategies.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what's truly striking is how overall brain connectivity systematically scaled down the more external support they had. Think of it like the brain's overall volume or network activity, the brain-only group. Their networks were the strongest, the most widespread. They were using the most brain power, connecting lots of areas.
makes sense. They had nothing else to rely on.
Exactly. The search engine group showed intermediate engagement. About 34 to 48% lower total connectivity across the brain compared to the brain-only group.
Still a big drop.
Huge drop. And the LLM group, their use of the AI prompted the weakest overall brain coupling. Up to 55% less total connectivity compared to brain-only.
Wow, over half the reduction in some cases.
Yeah. It strongly suggests that the more help you get from the outside, the less your brain needs to sort of fire on all cylinders internally.
That's incredible. So let's break that down. What about specific brain waves? Like alpha waves that are linked to internal focus, right?
Yeah.
And processing meaning.
Precisely. Alpha reflects that internally driven thought semantic processing. And here, the brain-only group really stood out. They showed significantly stronger and more widespread alpha networks, especially connections, say, from language areas to idea generation areas. They had almost double the significant alpha connections compared to the LLM group.
So their internal idea factory was buzzing.
You could say that. It suggests writing without help forces much more internal processing, generating ideas from memory, combining them like internal brainstorming. The search engine group, lower alpha connectivity than brain only, which might reflect lack reliance on internal memory. It fits with the Google effect idea. Why remember it if you can look it up?
Right. We offload memory.
We do. And the LLM group showed even lower alpha connectivity. It looks like a good chunk of the creative semantic work was just offloaded onto the AI.
Okay, so less internal idea generation. What about theta waves? Those are more about working memory, managing information, that mental juggling act.
Exactly. Working memory and executive control. And again, a clear difference. The brain-only group had significantly stronger theta connections, especially from the frontal control center areas back towards processing areas. It indicates a higher cognitive load, more effortful engagement of those central executive processes, actively coordinating ideas, language, attention. They were juggling more mental balls.
More intense mental juggling.
Definitely. The search engine group, much weaker theta connectivity. Having that online info seemed to reduce the need for such intense internal coordination.
Less juggling needed.
Right. And the LLM group showed uniformly lower theta activity, consistent with a much lower working memory burden. The AI gives you suggestions, structures things. You just don't need to hold and manipulate as much information in your head.
It really paints a picture of reduced cognitive effort.
Mm.
But what about the deeper integration? Forming a cohesive understanding. That's delta waves, right? Slower, large-scale integration.
That's right. Delta is associated with that large-scale integration, effortful internal tasks, pulling together memory and even emotional content, and the brain-only group, elevated delta connectivity, suggesting they were recruiting these broad, slow networks to really formulate the essay from scratch, to deeply integrate their thoughts. And the others, the search engine group showed a lack of significant delta connectivity. Which makes sense if you're in a more externally focused mode looking things up. You might not need those deep, slow, integrative rhythms as much. The study didn't specify LLM for delta, but the trend implies it would be even lower.
Okay, so less deep integration potentially. That's all fascinating in terms of effort. But what about the direction of information flow? Was it ideas bubbling up or commands coming down?
Yeah, this is super interesting. The brain-only group showed more evidence of bottom-up flow.
Bottom up, meaning?
Meaning information moving from, say, temporal and parietal regions, areas handling semantics, sensory info feeding ideas and language, up into the frontal executive system. The brain generating content internally first, then organizing it.
Ah, okay. Building from the ground up.
Exactly. The LLM group, conversely, likely have more top-down directed connectivity.
So the opposite.
Kind of.
Yeah.
The frontal regions seem to be primarily integrating and filtering the external input from the AI and then imposing that structure onto the essay narrative. More like the frontal lobe was supervising the AI's output rather than generating the core ideas itself.
Less internal generation, more external management. Fascinating. Let's shift from the brain to the actual essays and the writer's experiences. One thing you mentioned was homogeneity. Did the essays start sounding the same?
Oh, definitely. Especially with the LLM group. Their essays within each topic were statistically homogeneous, much less variation compared to the other groups. It really looked like a distinct LLM writing style emerged, making essays on the same topic sound quite similar regardless of the writer.
Whereas the brain-only group,
Showed strong variability. You could see individual voices, different approaches, diverse perspectives shining through. Just what you'd expect when people are drawing on their own unique thoughts.
and what about those linguistic fingerprints you mentioned? Named entities like names, places, and engrams, the word sequences, what did they show?
The LLM group used the most specific named entities, people, places, dates, definitions. They could pull in details instantly from the AI's knowledge base.
Makes sense.
The search engine group used significantly fewer, like at least half as many, and the brain-only group used about 60% fewer NERs than the LLM group. They were relying on what they knew or could reason out.
And the engrams, the phrases.
Also telling, the brain-only group used unique enneagrams reflecting their own thinking, like multiple choice or power uncertainty. The search engine group often used phrases perhaps found during searches, like homeless person or moral obliger, maybe short for obligation. The LLM group, they showed a bias towards things common in AI text, more third-person phrasing, generic advice-like phrases such as choose career.
Very distinct patterns. Now, this next bit feels really crucial, especially for learning. Essay ownership and memory recall. Did people feel the work was theirs? And can they remember it?
Yeah, this is a big one. The LLM group reported surprisingly low ownership. Many gave conflicting answers, sometimes saying full ownership, but then also admitting no ownership at all or maybe 50-50.
Ambivalent.
Very. And here's the kicker. They really struggled to accurately quote sentences from their own essays just minutes after finishing writing. Their recall was significantly impaired compared to the other groups.
Wow. So it wasn't sticking.
It seems not. In stark contrast, the brain-only group. Most claimed full ownership, and they had superior quoting performance. They remembered what they wrote. The search engine group was interesting strong ownership, maybe slightly less than brain-only, but their quoting ability was strong, pretty much on par with the brain-only group.
That's a huge potential red flag for deep learning, isn't it? If using the tool means you don't internalize or remember the material.
It absolutely raises that concern. If you can't recall it moments later, did you really integrate it? Did you learn it?
Were they happier with the essays? Did satisfaction differ? Maybe they didn't own it, but liked the result better.
You know, interestingly, for the first 3 sessions, reported satisfaction was generally very similar across all 3 groups. People seemed okay with the essays they produced, regardless of the tool.
Okay, so immediate satisfaction wasn't the issue.
Not initially,
Right.
but in session 4, something changed. Participants who had used the LLM for 3 sessions and then switched to brain-only the LLM to brain group, they actually preferred the essays they wrote just using their brains in that 4th session.
Really? Even though it's probably harder.
Exactly. They made comments like they were able to add more and elaborate more of my ideas and thoughts. It suggests maybe a deeper, latent satisfaction in creating something authentically yours, even if the initial product isn't as polished.
That is fascinating. Okay, let's dive into that switch session, session 4. This sounds really revealing about adaptation. First, that LLM to brain group, the ones who stopped using AI. What happened neurologically and linguistically?
Well, their brains showed weaker neural connectivity in that session 4, and under-engagement of those important alpha and theta networks we talked about, the ones for internal processing and working memory.
So their brains didn't just snap back.
Not really. I mean, they did improve a bit compared to their own very first session, but their brain activity was consistently lower than the people who had been using brain-only all along. They didn't develop those same strong consolidated networks.
And their writing.
Their writing showed traces of their previous AI use. The N-egram analysis found they were reusing vocabulary and structures from their earlier LLM-assisted essays, like a lingering LLM bias, even when writing alone.
So the AI style stuck with them.
It seems so. The researchers suggested that while AI might help achieve content competency quickly, it might do so without engaging fully in the underlying cognitive work. So when the AI scaffold is removed, the brain isn't quite ready to perform at the same level independently.
That's a powerful point. Almost like the cognitive muscles hadn't been fully exercised. But what about the flip side? The brain to LLM group. People who used only their brain for 3 sessions, then got the LLM in session 4. Did their brains just get lazy?
Amazingly, no. Quite the opposite happened. This group showed a significant increase in brain connectivity across all frequency bands when they finally got to use the LLM on a topic they'd already wrestled with.
An increase. Why?
It seems that having done the initial hard cognitive work themselves, they could then use the AI more strategically. They showed higher memory recall of the topic, and their brain activity patterns actually started to resemble the search engine group engaging widespread networks. They also wrote better prompts for the LLM, more specific, more fine-tuned, kind of like how the search engine users learn to craft good search queries.
So using the tool after the initial struggle was actually beneficial.
It suggests that might be the case. Strategically timing AI use after you've put in this self-driven effort might actually enhance neural engagement and integration. The researchers called it potentially a more neurocognitively optimal sequence for learning.
That is a massive takeaway. It's not just if you use AI, but when and how. This really leads us into the bigger picture then, the broader implications for learning, for cognition. This study seems to point towards a potential decrease in learning skills with heavy AI reliance.
It does paint that picture, yes. Over the 4 months, the LLM group consistently underperformed compared to the brain-only group neurologically, linguistically, and even in some scoring aspects. The concern raised is that extensive LLM use might diminish critical thinking, reduce engagement in deep analysis, and could lead to, well, the study uses strong terms like cognitive atrophy or metacognitive laziness.
Cognitive atrophy, that's a stark warning. And it ties right into critical thinking and problem solving, doesn't it? If the AI hands you the answer.
You're not doing the work. Exactly. The study noted a strong negative correlation between relying on AI tools and critical thinking skills, especially concerning for younger users who showed higher dependence. LLMs make getting answers easy, which might bypass the struggle needed for independent problem solving. It could even decrease the motivation to do your own research. Why bother if the AI summarizes it?
Right. And beyond just getting answers, what about the kind of information you get? The study mentioned echo chambers and bias.
Yeah, that's another important angle. Unlike a search engine, which usually gives you a list of different sources, diverse viewpoints for you to sift through.
Right, you have to evaluate them.
Exactly. LLMs often give you a single synthesized answer. This shifts you from being an active information seeker to more of a passive consumer. And that can inadvertently discourage questioning, discourage looking for alternatives, potentially worsening echo chamber effects. You get the AI's curated view, which might reinforce your biases without you even realizing it. Participants often weren't aware of these built-in information gaps.
That lack of awareness is worrying. Now, what about assessment? You mentioned the AI judge versus human teachers. How did their scoring compare? Could the AI even tell human from AI work?
This was really interesting. The AI judge consistently scored essays higher on things like uniqueness and content quality compared to the human teachers.
Higher. Why?
It suggests the AI's definition of quality might be more about structure, vocabulary range, things it's programmed to value. The human teachers, on the other hand, dealing with student work and AI text daily, were more skeptical. They could often recognize a generic LLM writing style, even specific styles for certain topics. They were better at sniffing out lack of originality.
So the humans had a better sense of authentic voice.
It seems so. And incredibly, the human teachers could identify consistent stylistic quirks belonging to the same human participant across different essays, recognizing that individual's writing fingerprint. The AI judge couldn't do that, even after being fine-tuned. Humans are still better at recognizing human nuance.
That's actually quite reassuring in a way. Okay, and just quickly, there was also a mention of energy cost.
Yeah, a side note, but relevant. LLM queries use significantly more energy, around 10 times more than a typical search query, something to bear in mind environmentally as these tools scale up.
Good point. And finally, the impact on things like self-belief, self-efficacy, and social learning.
The study touched on this too. It found students who already felt less confident academically were more likely to lean on AI, which could create a cycle of dependence. Plus, relying heavily on AI might mean fewer chances for direct human interaction, discussion, collaboration, that social learning aspect, which is so vital for truly embedding knowledge and developing understanding. So, wrapping up, what we've really uncovered today is a profound look at how these different tools shape not just the work you produce, but your actual cognitive processes. The findings strongly suggest that while AI offers amazing convenience, cuts down on immediate mental effort, that ease might come at a cognitive price. It could potentially lessen your tendency to think critically, to really grapple with information deeply.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now, trying to navigate this? The study seems to say, if you consistently let the AI do the heavy cognitive lifting, the thinking, planning, generating your brain's own networks. For those skills might not get the workout they need, like a muscle, right? If you don't use it, it doesn't get stronger. But, as we saw, it's nuanced. Using AI strategically, maybe after you've done the initial hard thinking yourself, that could actually boost engagement, amplify your efforts. Not just a crutch, it could be an amplifier if used wisely. Which leaves us with a really important question as LLMs continue to reshape everything. How can we harness the incredible power of these tools, their efficiency, their accessibility, without accidentally weakening our own human capacity for deep thought, for critical analysis, for genuine creativity? What balance will you strike to make sure these tools empower your thinking rather than erode it?